Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another weekly update on Luke's case. And we have to start this week with the protest on Monday in George Square in Glasgow. Thank you, everybody that turned out on such a horrible day. It was freezing and that rain never let up. We were absolutely drenched, but the atmosphere was fantastic. One of the things that I found absolutely amazing was some of you guys were engaging members of the public who were just walking past going, oh yeah, what's going on here? And telling them what was about. And some of you brought members of the public over to ask questions, which is the whole point of these things. It's not just to be there and saying, you know, we're going to be heard here. It's engaging people who might know nothing about it. So it was absolutely fantastic. Great to see so many of you there. And thank you for coming out and staying out in that horrible weather. It really was so cold. Also, I don't know if you've seen the footage of the two community police officers who came over to say hi, and they were absolutely brilliant. Basically just said, you know, if there's anything you need, give us a shout. Very interested in engaging with people, giving them information and talking about the case, asking about the book. So yeah, well done, everybody. That was amazing. And also all the people who made posters and banners and the people who brought along the t-shirts and sweatshirts and face masks, and it really was so successful. The media printed, there were about 50 protesters there. I think at one point there was over 150 people there because people were coming and going, obviously. But yeah, it was fantastic. So thank you to everybody for not just coming out, but for all the other contributions you made as well. We are in the process of organising the next one for Edinburgh, and we will announce it as soon as that's finalised. The message will be out there, and again, please share it as widely as you can, and we'll get as many people there as possible. Hopefully the weather will be a bit better as well. So yeah, that's the protest updated. Now, there's been a fair bit of discussion about blood at the crime scene and the likelihood of Jodie's attacker becoming bloodstained. And I had an accident last week, and anybody that knows me knows it's an accident because there's no way I would stage this. It involves red wine, and there's no way I would tip a glass of red wine out unless it was an accident. Perfectly good glass of red wine. So let me show you. These are my wine glasses, okay? And this little beaker here, if I can show you, can you see? Which way around does it go? That way. So there's 150 mils of liquid, okay, in this beaker. Let me pour it into the glass so that you can see a glass of wine. Well, if it had red wine in it. That's how much is in a glass of wine, 150 mils, okay? Now, I poured a glass of wine last week and I wasn't paying attention. I went to put it down, and one of the sides of the bottom was on a raised surface and it tipped the glass of wine. My desk here is 5.5 feet long. Most of the wine spilled to this side, on the desk, down onto the floor, both sides, front and back. Now let me show you. I grabbed the first thing that I had to hand to wipe it up, okay? This is the towel that I used to wipe up the wine. Can you see? Can you see the amount of wine that's on this towel? Okay. Now, that's only what I wiped up from the desk. There was stuff that ran down on the floor. There were runs down the drawers and everything. But incredibly, there were splashes the whole length of the desk, the whole 5.5 feet of the desk. And they went everywhere because it obviously hit with a little bit of force. The splashes were everywhere, including on my wall. Now, 150 mils. And that's how much spread there was. 5 to 5.5 litres is 33 to 6.5 of these. Just to give people an idea, this claim that the attacker would not necessarily be bloodstained, and somehow that he managed to strip Jodie out of her clothing and tie her with her own clothing and still not become bloodstained. 150 mils, look at it, 150 mils. At least 35 times that. And no transfer. Well, make of that as you will. Sorry, had to be said. Now, next on this week's agenda is Stockman. Now, I know we've talked about Stockman before, and just to remind people that although he was identified, the name that was given has never been released. Okay, so I am not going to give that name. Anybody guessing, it's pure speculation. He was named by the witness, but that name has never been released. But what I wanted to talk about is how the Commission dealt with that information. So the Scottish Criminal Cases Review Commission, how they dealt with that information. So we didn't find out until 2014 that Stockman had been identified. We'd always believed that he was just never traced. And then when the Commission did the report in 2014, it turned out that yes, he had been identified, a name had been put forward, and the witness gave the reasons for thinking that's who this person was. So the first thing the Commission did was they went back to this witness and interviewed her. And they concluded she couldn't remember in 2014 exactly what she'd said in 2003. She couldn't remember. So the Commission concluded that her recall in 2014 was probably more reliable than her recall in 2003. Now, I don't know if it's just me. I can't remember what I did yesterday. If you ask me what I was doing 11 years ago or what I said 11 years ago, there is not a chance I'd be able to remember. But that was the first thing that they used to try and make this failure to disclose evidence insignificant. The second thing they used is they went back to Donald Findlay and asked him what he would have done with this information had it been disclosed at the time of trial. Well, as the Commission themselves say, their job is not to look at how the trial could have been run. Their job is to look at how the trial was run. How could Donald Findlay say that what he would have done with it if he didn't have it? It's ridiculous. The strategy, the defence strategy was run on what they had at the time. So he can't possibly say what he would have done with it if he had it when he didn't have it. But the Commission used that to come to the conclusion, I suppose, that, well, no harm was done. So here we have the bending of the rules, disclosure. The evidence should have been disclosed, clearly. It was material. It was an important fact in the whole case, because everybody believed Stockman had never been traced. They don't release it, and then the body, the organisation that's set up to look at these matters later, in case there's been a miscarriage of justice or in case there's been failure to follow procedures and everything, turns cartwheels to try to explain away an obvious breach in procedures. And again, you're left saying, why? What's the point of having an overview organisation if that's what it does with the power it's supposed to have? So, is there anything else in this case that hasn't been disclosed? I imagine so. How do we ever find out about it? We know, for example, there are witnesses coming back now who are saying they were asked to give a statement at the time. The police didn't seem interested and then never came back. So we know there are lines of, but we already knew there were lines of inquiry that weren't followed up, but we now know there are even more lines of inquiry that were never followed up. And the idea that this investigation was not focused on one suspect to the exclusion of all others is nonsense, and we know that now. So how they can keep saying they did a first-class investigation and they don't need to look for anybody else is just beyond me. And they keep rolling it out. They keep rolling out the same thing. They're still using the same statement today as they've been using since about 2008. So that gives you an idea how much attention they're prepared to pay to this. Next up, oh yes, there has been some discussion about hairs at the scene. So there are a number of different types of hair found at the scene. We know there was strands of long brown hair, some with roots still attached, so they've literally been pulled out by the roots. Some cut at both ends, and many short colourless hairs that were found all over Jodie's body. So some people were asking about, what does cut at both ends mean? In what context? So you cut your hair at this end, mine needs cut. You cut your hair at this end, you don't then cut it at this end. The obvious thing is that in the struggle with the attacker, the knife cut some of Jodie's hair. Now, I did see a suggestion somewhere, I have no idea where it came from, a suggestion that Jodie's gran had cut a lock of her hair at the scene. That absolutely is not the case. I have never seen anything to remotely suggest that. So the explanation for hair cut at both ends, I think, has to be that in the struggle, the knife cut through some of Jodie's hair. Surprisingly, the hairs with the roots attached didn't throw up any results, which seems bizarre. I mean, you'd have thought they would have been quite simple to get results from. And the others, the cut hairs, were agreed to be Jodie's from examination with a microscope. The short colourless hairs, those are an absolute mystery. We don't know if they're human or animal. We don't know what they mean by colourless. Do they mean white? Do they mean bleached until there's no pigment left? We don't know. And well, surprise, surprise, they got no results for them either. But the question is, where did they come from? Because they were on Jodie's body and on all sides of Jodie's body. So I think at the very least, that's a really important question that has to be answered. Were they human or animal? And where did they come from? This is the thing about the Graham, by colourless, do you mean grey? I don't know, Graham. I don't know. Grey, white, bleached till there's no colour left in it. Don't know. But this is the thing, you know, all these claims that we're being disrespectful by doing what we're doing. How much respect was shown to Jodie by leaving all these questions unanswered? I mean, we've talked about the utter disrespect of leaving her out uncovered in the rain all night, of moving the body before the forensics people. But we've talked about that. But it's things like this where they just didn't bother. And I don't know about you, but that is, aside from deeply disrespectful, it's totally unacceptable. In such a brutal murder, you need to know the answers to these questions. Okay, Elwood, it's ruled out that the hairs were not synthetic. Could they have been from a wool carpet? Again, no idea. No idea. They got no results from them. So, yeah, very, very frustrating. And that's why an independent inquiry, let's get all of this done. Let's get those hairs tested and find out what they are and where they might have come from. You know, these are the important things. Well, too quick, I'll come back to these. Something else that came up this week was the timing of when Luke was charged. So let's rewind. We had the Section 14 interview on the 14th of August 2003, 6 weeks after the murder. And that was the one that we've talked about, where it was late, the judges later concluded that the police officers, the behaviour of the police officers was outrageous and to be deplored, and that the commission agreed that Luke's rights were breached because there was no solicitor present. All of that horrendous interrogation of a boy who just turned 15 in the middle of August 2003. Towards the end of August 2003, one of the police media spokespersons said that they'd got as much evidence as they were likely to get by that stage. And the media then reported at the beginning of September that a report had been put into the Procurator Fiscal to see if there was sufficient evidence to bring charges. They later denied that report had been put in. And I think 2 months later, yeah, it was November 2003, a report was sent to the Procurator Fiscal. Now, by all accounts, this was the second report, although by then they were denying that the first one had gone in. So there's a couple of points about this. The first one clearly didn't have sufficient evidence, or it would have been accepted by the PF and the case would have moved forward at that point. But this officer, just before the report goes in, is saying that they had all the evidence they were likely to get. So fast forward to November, the report goes in. This time, the media report that the report to the PF names Luke as the sole suspect. So before any decision's been taken about whether charges are going to be brought or not, they're saying this report has only got one suspect in it, and they name him. Okay, so now the PF has to decide if there's sufficient evidence, and by sufficient evidence, they mean enough of a story that, taken without any arguments against it, would be enough to convince a jury to convict. So this is not about fairness or guilt or innocence or anything like that. It's about successful outcomes. What's a successful outcome to the prosecution? It's a conviction. They don't see an exoneration. They don't see a not guilty as a successful outcome. And yet, it should be if our justice system's working properly. A successful outcome is that justice is served, not that convictions are obtained. Justice is served. So, we've had the September attempt. We've now got the November attempt. But it's another 5 months, December, January, February, March, April, not 4.5 months before they actually move for a charge. Why? Why did they wait 4.5 months? Now, we know they did the FBI jolly over to the States to get a profile that obviously gave them nothing, because if it had given them anything, they would have used it. Was that a ploy to say, oh, we're still gathering evidence, to push the time forward to a point where when they charged Luke, by the time it came to trial, he could be tried as an adult? What do you think? If they'd moved after September to bring a charge, because in Scotland at the time, we had the 110-day rule. I've talked about this before. If they'd moved in September after the original report, Luke would have been tried as a minor. If they'd moved in the November, after the November report, Luke would have been tried as a minor. By pushing it forward to April 2004, Luke turned 16 before the end of the 110-day period and could therefore be tried as an adult. So, what do you think? Do you think charges were deliberately delayed to make use of the 110-day period when Luke turned 16? Interestingly, as we've said before as well, he was arrested in April 2004. So he'd been named and photographed in the media all the way up to that point, and then they can't name him for legal reasons until he turns 16 in the July. And then they can name and photograph him, or name and show photographs of him again. It's worrying, I think, that those sort of manipulations can be used against children. Against children. And like I keep saying, it could happen to anybody. It could happen to any one of us. Now, the whole moving forward of the organisations to try to raise funds and to make finance or funds available for the various different bits and pieces. You know that we can't fundraise for individually convicted people. We can't do that, but we can find ways to raise funds for groups of individuals or for challenges to legal processes. And one of the ways that we were looking at doing that is t-shirts, hoodies, car stickers, that sort of thing. One of Luke's supporters, forgive me, Mars, if I pronounce your name wrongly, is it Mars Vorian, had written an album about the case and has a song dedicated to Corinne, about Corinne. And he made contact to say he would like to make the album available to Luke supporters for free, but with the option to make a donation to the fund or funds once we get them set up, if we'd like to do that. So the first thing I want to say is a massive, massive thank you, Mars. That is a really, really, really generous offer to donate your own work in that way. So there will be links today. I'll be putting links in below. We don't quite have the organisation set up yet. It has taken a bit longer than planned. Partly my fault. Last week was written off after the live. I was ill for about 3 days trying to recover. But yeah, we'll be updating on all of that. Basically, as soon as we have everything in place to start properly moving that forward. So we're nearly there. Now this next one, Robert Walsh posted on one of the groups, can't remember which one it was, that he'd been reading a newspaper thing from one of our best friends in mainstream media. Now, the subject matter of this, I think, is really interesting. It's in England, it's referred to as Helens Law. In Scotland, it's referred to as Suzanne's Law. And the proposal for this new legislation is that people convicted of murder who won't reveal where the body is should not get parole. Well, if they didn't commit the murder, how can they say where the body is? But there's more to it than that, and it's something that I think we really need to think about. When we put people in prison for these crimes, it's in part for punishment and to pay their debt to society, and it's in part supposedly for rehabilitation and making them ready for release as better people. So the punishment part of any sentence is exactly that. That is the punishment we as a country, as a justice system, say must be served for that crime. What we're doing now, if this proposed legislation goes through, what we're doing now is saying, here's the punishment, this is going to be the punishment, and then we're going to add on extra punishments and extra punishments and extra punishments. So why do we bother having set sentencing rules? Why don't we just say we're going to put these guys away and throw away the key? Because that essentially is what this proposed legislation is suggesting. Now, please don't get me wrong. I understand why the families involved have campaigned so hard for this change to be made, because they've never been able to properly lay their loved ones to rest. And I don't have words for how that must feel. I have no idea. Thank God I have never been in that position. And I understand why they would want that closure. But the danger there is that in order to penalise some, it penalises everybody. And that includes the guys who didn't do it and the girls who didn't do it. And we've already seen how difficult it is to get these convictions looked at, to get them re-examined and overturned. So throwing yet another obstacle in the way, it doesn't serve justice in any way, in my opinion. It doesn't serve justice in any way. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that had come up. Now, who do we think in mainstream media would argue that such legislation might be unfair because some people are innocent and wrongly convicted. Who wants to guess? Come on, let's have some names. Any names? Anybody want to? Oops. Oh, sorry, wrong one. How do I get rid of this? Sharon. Oh, there we go. Okay. So Gordon says Jane Hamilton. Graham Kerr says James Matthews. Thora says none. Jane Hamilton. Jane Hamilton. You're right, Jane Hamilton. Yep. Arguing that it wouldn't be fair because some people are wrongly convicted. This is what we're up against, people. It's insane. Absolutely crazy stuff. Okay. I don't have anybody doing my other questions for me this week, so this might be quite a short update. The last thing I have on my main list today is all about videos. Now, you guys have been doing absolutely incredible videos, mad videos. They're fantastic. Short videos that you've been sharing all over the place. There's stuff out on TikTok. They are really, really, really amazing and great for just grabbing people's attention really quickly and going, this is what it's about. But what I wanted to, so obviously, again, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's the sort of thing that is pulling people in. They're looking at it and going, oh, what's this? Now, one of the groups, so Jodie Jones and Luke Mitchell, Who Got Justice, the official group, have taken that a stage further. And they've taken the article with the 10 facts about the case. And they're doing installments, looking at each of the questions and taking them apart, which is something I don't have time to do in the lives, obviously, but really going into them in depth and looking at all the different reasons why those facts are not facts at all. And I watched the first one the other night, and they had all their quotes ready, all their experts ready to quote from, and it's just a really, really good way of saying, mainstream media, we're literally going to take you point by point. So I will add a link to where you can find the series, and I think they're going to do maybe 2 questions out of the 10 every week, maybe 3, just depending on how much they get through. So if anybody's interested in seeing how the media article is absolutely deconstructed by the actual evidence, then have a look in the link and you can follow it week by week to see the whole thing being taken apart. Oh yes, there was, I've got a note here and I can't remember what I was going to say about it. The cannabis and who supplied whom with the cannabis. Well, we know there was an iron bar floating around that day within Jodie's family, and for a long time it was believed that it belonged to Ferris and that Jodie's brother was keeping it for Ferris. That turned out not to be the case. Not to be the case at all. It did actually belong to Jodie's brother, and Ferris at one point that afternoon said he cut a piece of the 9 bar for his mother's partner. Now that's how it's recorded in the police statement, for his mother's partner. His mother's partner would have been Jodie's uncle, presumably, because that's how Ferris became a cousin. his mum and Jodie's uncle were together. Were they together in 2003? I don't know. I don't know. I just find it really interesting that nobody was named. Again, this he said it was for his mother's partner, is the point I'm making. He didn't give any names. So yeah, the whole thing about Luke supposedly supplying Jodie with cannabis. Well, we know Jodie was smoking before she met Luke. That's the first thing. She was smoking cannabis before she met Luke. And we also know that Ferris was apparently supplying everybody as well. But the question that came up was who was supplying Ferris? And we don't have a definitive answer to that. I suppose the closest we've got is this claim that he took a bit of Joseph's 9-bar to take to his mother's partner. The impression was given, actually, that Jodie's brother was keeping the cannabis, and that's why Ferris was going back at 6 o'clock that night to collect it. That was the original impression that was given. But clearly, when it became apparent that that was not the case, we still had no explanation for why Ferris was going back at 6 o'clock that night and for why he then didn't turn up. His only reason was he forgot. He was with a couple of girls and he forgot. So again, you know, make of it as you will. Okay, let me have a look and see if I can check through. Oh, I don't have the final figures yet, but that will be out very soon. I've still got all the accounting to do, so I will get back to you ASAP with that one. There was another one there. What was the question? All right, yeah, thanks, Stephanie. So Friday nights at 9 p.m. for the videos taking apart the 10 facts article. So Friday nights, 9 p.m. on YouTube. I'll put the link once I'm finished here. Let me see, there was a couple of questions there that caught my eye. Sorry, just bear with me. Okay, a colleague of mine heard at the time that Corinne's car was seen in Loanhead on the evening Jodie died, insinuating she was getting rid of evidence. Is this just more rumour, Sandra? Yes. Yes. There was also a claim that Corinne's car was seen at the end of Roansdyke Path, at the New Battle end of Roansdyke Path. I believe later it was discovered that the witness, the make of car that the witness had mentioned was a different make of car from the car Corinne drove. So yeah, there's one problem straight away. The Loanhead thing, I've never heard that before, but there was no suggestion Corinne left her house that evening after she came in from work, not to go to Loanhead, not to go to the New Battle end of the path. So yeah, more local gossip. Okay, let's see, what do we have? Just don't understand how Luke got sentenced as long. No, it was a very unusual, or an unusually long sentence for someone so young. And I was quite interested. I had to read through the codes for prosecuting, or whatever they're called in Scotland, and three things that they have to take into account are whether there's sufficient evidence, whether it's credible and reliable evidence, and whether it's in the public interest to prosecute. Now, if I were at all cynical, I would say the bit about the public interest was already taken care of for them by the media. They made sure there was massive public interest in getting a conviction in this case. But credible and reliable, well, you've all seen now the difficulties with the evidence in this case, which begs the question, why did the Procurator Fiscal's office believe this evidence was credible and reliable? If we can take it apart, if we can say, hang on, she said this, and then she said that. He said this, and then he said that. The story's changed. The descriptions don't fit. The timings are... If we can do that, why couldn't the people paid large sums of money to figure it out do that in the first place? So yeah, the length of sentence was unusual for somebody so young and with no previous history of any sort of crime. Okay. If we had the funds, could we have the DNA samples looked at again? Janet, I wish it were that simple. I wish it were that simple, because if all it took was money, I have no doubt that we could raise the money required. I have no doubt. The problem is getting them to agree to release the samples for testing in the first place. And the argument there would be they've got no reason to do that. There was forensic evidence produced at the time, and a conviction's been obtained. So why do they need to retest the samples? And that's where we have to come up with strong reasons for why those samples need to be retested. Again, I am taking advice on this about the best way to sorry, I've just seen a big notice from Shannon. Don't block me. I'm trying. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm taking advice on the best way to try to go about that, because I think we'll probably only get one shot at it. If we get it wrong, that'll be it. So yeah, we'll just keep plugging away at that. Now, give me a second. There was another question there that will you... Oh, it's gone. Where did it go? Will you be joining James English in his next podcast regarding the case? Don't know yet. Okay. Need to march very soon outside the Scottish Parliament. Yep, we'll get that organised ASAP. So Lee says, nothing would surprise me in this case. In my opinion, it was definitely held back until he became 16. Yeah, that's kind of my opinion as well. This is something that came up during this week, actually, and it's a very, very good point. If Luke was the psycho they put him out as, why did it take so long to get him off the streets? It doesn't make sense. And that is a very, very good point, because if they genuinely believed that it was Luke that did to Jodie what was done to her, then surely there would have been a massive concern that if he somehow just snapped and, you know, completely lost it once, then maybe he would do it again. But you would have thought it would, at the very least, have been a consideration. Now, I can't remember what it was Dobby said, but it was something along the lines of, after they'd interrogated Luke, they basically told his mum and dad they might want to keep an eye on him and sent him off home. Like, seriously? Seriously? If they genuinely believed it was Luke that did that? So they left him. If they genuinely believed it was Luke, they were happy to leave him in the community for another 9.5 months. Again, make of it, as I keep saying. Oh. Yeah, justice system is broken. How could Corinne and Luke not be able to do anything with the press naming and shaming him? There is, do you know, a lot of people have said that. They should have complained to the Press Complaints Commission, and they should have, you know, they should have got the press done for this. That aside from the sheer amount of coverage, and anybody that was around here at the time will remember, it was ludicrous. Every day, every paper, just more and more and more and more and more stuff. And there was nothing they could do about it. There was nothing they could do to stop it. And this is why I keep saying to people, you know, it could happen to anybody. What would you do if every newspaper and every news broadcast on telly was saying this stuff about you or a member of your family? Would you know? Would you have any idea how to stop it? Would you know where to go? And that's the problem. People don't. And by the time, if you ever did manage to take some action, by the time you got there, it's already been all over the place anyway, and the damage is done. And I've said before, you know, I don't advocate muzzling the press. I think a free press is essential if we want to have any semblance of democracy. But a free, responsible press is what we need. And this sort of irresponsible naming and shaming before charges or anything, yes, it's more frowned upon now. I'm not entirely sure it would make any difference if there was another high-profile case to come up tomorrow. So really, it's instilling in journalists and editors themselves the responsibility to keep it fair. If nothing else, keep it fair, because our system says everybody has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. We know that didn't happen here. We know it didn't. It couldn't happen here because of what the media did. Okay, let me see, what else do we have? Yeah, so Graham says a successful outcome is reaching the correct verdict. That's what it should be. That's what it should be. But we know now that they look at a successful outcome as being a conviction. And the reason behind that, I think, it's all to do with money. They see it as wasted resources to take a case to trial that ends in a not guilty. So they have to justify the money spent getting it to trial with a conviction. I know it sounds crazy, but actually that's essentially what they do, is they say, if we're going to spend X amount of money on it, then if we don't get a conviction at the end of it, the money's been wasted. So, yep. Justice not. Oh yeah. Okay. Was there a purse found near the V in the wall that the police missed, and what relevance to the case is it, if any? Yes, there was a purse found. Oh, now you got me, Julie. I think it was 12 days into the investigation, so the path was still closed off, it was still guarded, and this purse turns up. Now, it was found under the stone at the bottom of the wall where the V-point was. So it was kind of the stepping stone to get you up a bit to get over the wall. The purse had cards in it that hadn't been stopped and could then identify the person to whom it belonged. That person has never been named, so I'm not going to name them now. What we do know, or so far, is that this person was not connected to anybody in the case that we know about at the minute. So the relevance, though, is how did it get there? If it had been there since the beginning, what took them so long to find it? Because we know they examined this rock at the V-point for blood. So if the purse was there, you would have thought they'd have noticed it then. If it wasn't there from the beginning and it was somehow introduced, then the question has to be, how did it get there? This was a murder scene, supposedly secure murder scene. How did this purse get there with somebody that's completely unrelated to the entire thing? We've never got to the bottom of it, and I don't know if we ever will. But that's the story about the purse. Why did all the search trio wash their clothes before handing them over to the police? Well, we don't know. The police left it nearly a week to ask for them. So, yeah, maybe everything just got chucked in the wash, and by the time the police came and said, yeah, we need that, that, and that, they were like, oh no, we've already washed them. Maybe they thought there was no real need to preserve them because the police hadn't asked for them in that first 5 days. They hadn't asked for the clothes. So maybe they just thought, oh, they don't need them. Maybe because they were being convinced that Luke was the only person they were looking at. I don't know the answer to that one. Oh, hang on. It's obvious the DNA was not conducted in a professional manner in a way that would be expected of a reasonable person or persons. I would agree with that very much so. The whole DNA thing was an absolute nightmare. All the different labs involved, and they've all got different labeling protocols, and you're looking at them saying, is this the same thing as that? You know, was that taken from this lab and sent to that lab, or is this two different bits of the same thing? It was an absolute nightmare trying to pull it all together. And I imagine there's still stuff that I've missed, just in terms of what was labelled as what. It shouldn't be that difficult. It shouldn't be that difficult to come along after the event and look back at what was done and say, okay, these people did this, these people did that, these were the results, and there's where it went forward. That shouldn't be as difficult as it is in this case. So it's something else that I think we need to look at in this country is how these processes are followed through and how transparent they are after the event. Now, we're almost done for today, and I wanted to say that we have a new initiative about to kick off. But obviously, we want it to have maximum impact. So I'm not going to post anything publicly. Keep an eye on your inboxes, and we will be, lots of us will be making contact over the next week or so with next moves and things, something very positive, very concrete that you can do that'll help move things forward. So just keep an eye out. We will be in touch. Did Luke have a psychological evaluation after being arrested? Yeah, he was perfectly normal. All his psychological assessments come back saying perfectly normal, but they can't figure out his propensity to have committed the murder or to have to have moved on from a propensity to commit the murder, because he insists he didn't do it. So those just go round in circles. Those just go absolutely round in circles. It's ridiculous. We can't see if he's likely to offend again because he insists he didn't offend in the first place. Well, actually, yeah, that's the case. Don't try to make it sound like something sinister. You can't assess his likelihood to offend again if he never offended in the first place. Anyway, I'm going to call it at that. Do I have anything else to pick up on here just before I go? Oh, come back. No motive. Yeah, that is the other thing. You know, you don't need to come up with motive to bring a case to trial, but most people would expect there to be some sort of reason for what happened if this person's responsible, but they've never been able to come up with anything even remotely credible. But yeah, I'm going to call it at that. There's a lot of work to be done tonight and over the next couple of days. So thank you again, everybody, for joining me, and I will see you again next week. Same time, same place. Okay, bye. Thanks, everybody. Bye.